Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome on behalf of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the New Jersey State Veterans Chamber of Commerce, and the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to today's webinar, Growing America's Hispanic Veteran-Owned Businesses. Happy Veterans Day to everybody, and to all of the veterans on the call, thank you for your service to the United States America's Armed Forces. It is my honor and privilege to present our President and CEO, Ramiro A. Cavazos.
Well, thank you so much, Leroy, for moderating today's panel. Thank you for your service to our National Hispanic Chamber as our Vice President for Government Affairs and International Relations. You have put together a great program. I'm very honored to be here with each of you. Happy National Veterans Day for our nation. As Latinos, we're very proud of our military service. In fact, Latino Americans have served in every major war in the history of our country since the American colonial period. More than 150,000, of course, served in World War I, more than 500,000 in World War II. And if you go back to the Civil War and the American colonial period before then, more than 10,000 Latinos living in this country served our military and shed blood and pay the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. Today, we want to talk about not just veterans and their service on this special day, but as the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, talk about connecting that service with also our nation's economic vitality. Today, we have two great members of our panel, themselves leaders in their own right for other outstanding chambers that we're affiliated with. And today, I just want to say this important event is like none other. This is why we protect our freedom, we protect our democracy, and every day we need to earn that. And you all know that, and today it's more evident than ever that this democracy is not one that we can take for granted. And I'm very honored today to be talking to you from TMI Episcopal School. This is the Texas Military Institute. My youngest son, Roberto Carlos Cavazos, we call him Robbie. Today was his first pass in review. He's in the Corps, and here at TMI in San Antonio, where I'm talking to you from, he is in the same school that was started in the first class by General Douglas MacArthur, one of 9 people to serve our nation as a 5-star general. My father and all of my uncles and many aunts and cousins served in the military. And for many of us, that was our way to get an education and to obviously achieve the American dream. And today we have great speakers who have served their country, but also have entered the chamber world to advance our Latino businesses and their interests, but also as entrepreneurs, creating jobs and serving our country as small business owners themselves. I want to say that the importance of our 4.7 million Hispanic-owned businesses is profoundly adding up to more than 800 billion to the economy, and the 61 million Latinos in our nation that we represent, that the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce have a $2.6 trillion economic impact. So we are 18% of the population, but if we were our own economy, the 61 million Latinos would be the 8th largest economy in the world. Before I introduce my friend Francisco, I want to give you all warm wishes from our board of directors, our chairwoman, Alice Rodriguez with JP Morgan Chase, and our board of directors representing our 250 Hispanic chambers from around the country, our more than 61 million Latinos, and of course, many corporations that invest in our programs to help small businesses. But of course, above that are our Hispanic business owners, many of them part of that 4.7 million network. So I'm very honored to be here with each of you today. And let me turn the program over to our first great speaker, Francisco Cortes. I've known him for more than 2 years. He's a member of our chamber, and he is the CEO and chairman of the Setroc Group. Francisco Cortes runs the Setroc Group. It's a multicultural communications firm. He's an 8A contractor. We're very proud of him. And he is also a U.S. Army veteran, having served at the Elite National Training Center in Fort Irwin, California, in the U.S. National Guard. Mr. Cortes serves as the president also of the New Jersey State Veterans Chamber of Commerce and was recently appointed by Governor Murphy to the Restart and Recovery Council to assist with New Jersey's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Francisco, as the owner of the Setroc Group, is an award-winning service-disabled, veteran-owned small business firm that offers more than 20 years of broadcast digital and television experience. I'm very proud of Francisco because he's worked for ABC News, CNN, and Espanol News Corporation, and of course, Associated Press. He's at the highest of levels in his industry. Since 2017, his company has grown rapidly. He's becoming the first veteran-owned business to be awarded a multi-year contract with the state of New Jersey, a multi-year marketing contract with the U.S. Army. And just last week, he received a 5-year contract with the U.S. Office of Veterans Affairs. Francisco gives back to his community. And Francisco is a great friend of ours because he gives from the heart. Francisco also serves on the Community and Economic Development Board for the city of Patterson, New Jersey. So without further ado, Francisco, thank you so much for your service to our nation. Thank you for entrepreneurship, and thank you for being on this panel with not just myself and Leroy, but of course, Dr. Erica Gonzalez, who we'll hear from later, who chairs the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and herself, a proud medical doctor, but also an Air Force veteran. So with that, Francisco, thank you so much. The program is yours.
Muchas gracias, Ramiro. First of all, saludos a todos. There were a lot of titles mentioned during my introduction, but one title that I'm most proud of is U.S. Veteran, which goes to the very topic of this discussion today. I'd like to take a second to thank the USHCC for recognizing the sacrifices of our veteran community. To the fact that such a large organization took time out today to honor those who unselfishly gave so much, and many contribute greatly to the business community, the Latino business community, says a lot about the organization. So Ramiro, gracias, Leroy, gracias, Laura, and the entire team. From the bottom of our heart, we thank you again. But to the very topic, it's an honor to be here. As Ramiro mentioned, I have the distinct honor of pleasure and of serving as the New Jersey State Veterans Chamber of Commerce. So 99% of my time is focused on growing and empowering the veteran businesses across the state, particularly New Jersey, but across the state. Today's topic is growing America's Hispanic veteran-owned businesses. What does that mean? It means a lot. One of the things I want to begin speaking on is my business is a multicultural communications firm, which I only started with my wife 3 years ago. And in 3 years, we have seen so much success, but that was a very, very hard thing to do. I want to touch a little bit on contracting as a veteran business and what that looks like. So the contracting world, from the corporate sector to the state level to the federal level, is all very, very different. And I'm going to touch a little bit about how each is different. So the importance of registering your business as a veteran-owned business is key, and it has been key to our success. For example, when we first started contracting on a state level, it was just very confusing. We didn't know what to do. I often joke and say that when I go into government contracting, it's like learning a third language. I learned English, Spanish, and Governese. There's a lot of paperwork involved, but it gave us a competitive advantage. So what it means to get certified as a service-disabled veteran business is that state and federal agencies, as well as private corporations, take a certain percentage of their spend and they dedicate it to certified veteran businesses. So it's important that you get certified as a veteran business. Our first contract with the federal government, which took us actually 18 months to get, was with the United States Veterans Affairs. And it was a service-disabled veteran set-aside, meaning that we couldn't touch it unless we were certified as a veteran, service-disabled veteran business. In the state of New Jersey, actually, when I started working with our founder, Colonel Cantor, the state of New Jersey passed a law that said that 3% of the state's overall budget spend should go to service-disabled veteran businesses. And to our surprise, when we created the chamber in 2018, not $1 had been spent or awarded to a veteran business. until we started advocating to it. So it's important that you align yourself as a veteran business with organizations like the USHCC that support veteran businesses in kind of open networks, and the New Jersey Veteran Chamber of Commerce and the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce that kind of provide resources so that you can grow your business. One other thing I'd like to highlight is scale. How do you grow as a veteran business? So when we first started out, the whole certification industry was incredibly confusing to us. So we partnered with organizations that offer free services like PTAC. PTAC is a nationwide organization, and PTAC stands for Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. They are funded by the Department of Defense, and they actually assign you a counselor to work with you for those looking to get into the federal marketplace and grow within it. The second resources for veteran businesses that has been instrumental is a program out of Maryland called the National VIP Center, Veteran Institute of Procurement. They have 4 stages of certification for those looking to get into state and federal work. First is VIP Grow, where you participate in a Grow class and you learn the basics of federal contracting. The second phase of it is, VIP Start, VIP Grow, and then VIP International. All of these assets are incredibly essential to growth and free, of course, which is great because, gratia bueno. One thing that I have to stress is past performance, right? It's the one thing. So I spent 20 years in corporate media, and I immediately thought that contract would just rein in and come in because of my past experience with the corporate sector. That actually didn't translate at all into business and contracting. One other thing is, so I had to start small. My very first contract that I mentioned with the VA was a contract out of the state of Washington. It was called Strength at Home. And that contract award was $90,000. But what folks fail to see is that out of the $90,000 that I was awarded, I only got to keep $5,000. But I did a calculated assessment as a business owner because I needed past performance. And one thing is, once you have a year-long contract with the VA or other agencies, people start trusting your work. In this case, that worked out well because that contract led to a second contract with the VA and a third. And just 3 days ago, we were awarded a 5-year contract with the U.S. Veterans Affairs. 4 days ago, luckily, we were also awarded a 2-year contract with Fort Stewart, the U.S. Army. So we're seeing substantial growth in state and federal contracting, but that took a very long time. I think everyone is familiar with the term net worth. Your network is your net worth. It's important to align yourself with organizations like the USHCC, our chamber, and the San Antonio Chamber, with like-minded individuals that can assess and assist you with the questions that you're going to have as a small business owner, which are going to be a lot, right? I myself have questions. I've been in business for 3 years, and I've been incredibly fortunate to see rapid success, but I myself have questions that I turn to other people who have been in business for 10 or 15 years. So get certified, align yourself with other veteran businesses that can assist you with growth, partner with other organizations and other small businesses that you can kind of benefit into the contracting realm, and you'll see a lot of success. Numbers and scale, I think in New Jersey alone, there are 8,000 veteran-owned small businesses, but nationally, the number is greater. But when it comes to set-aside competitions, there's not enough registered veteran businesses that they can give a contract to a veteran business for marketing or anything specific to your spend. So I urge those in attendance to get registered and certified as a veteran business, because you're more likely to get a set-aside contract than not if you're certified and partner with, I think federally, there's a rule of 3 for any specific code. And on the state level, there's a rule of 2 for any set-aside contract award. So the more veteran businesses that are certified, the better it is. I kind of want to open it up to Dr. Erika Gonzalez, because I want to, after her presentation, kind of leave it open to the entire group to ask us questions. So the great thing about introducing a doctor is that there's a lot of words, a lot of big words in her introduction. So Dr. Gonzalez, please pardon me if I mess any of this up, but I'll give it my best shot. So Dr. Erika Gonzalez is the CEO and president of both South Texas Allergy and Asthma Medical Professions Stamp Clinical Research for the past 4 years. She served as chief of the Allergy Immunology Division at the Children's Hospital of San Antonio and was the associate professor of clinical pediatrics and Baylor College of Medicine. She is an adjunct professor in the internal medicine at the USHCC and is actively involved as a community leader and in serving on the board of directors for Setroc as an advisor to the Dean of Science and Engineering Technology at St. Mary University. At the state level and at a national level, she currently sits on the board for Texas Allergy Society and is on a stock committee with the Texas Department of State Health Sciences. She is a co-chair for the Small Business for America's Future. Recently, Dr. Gonzalez founded the nonprofit Con Corazon, addressing health inequities and emergency preparedness in San Antonio and the surrounding area. Dr. Gonzalez is a native of San Antonio, graduated magna cum laude from St. Mary's University, obtained her medical degree from the University of Texas, medical branch of Galveston, and returned home after completing 10 years of active duty service as a medical officer for the U.S. Air Force, Go Air Force. Dr. Erika Gonzalez is the 2020 chairman of the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Saludos, Erika, and a pleasure to introduce you.
Gracias, Francisco. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your presentation. I'm excited about so many of the things that you said, because as I came out of active duty in the beginning, there was so much of this stuff that was new to me. And so I think it's important to get that message out, because you're right about how important that is. I'm very happy to be here today. I'm so grateful to the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Ramiro and his team, Leroy, Laura, for putting all of this together and giving us the opportunity to acknowledge the many contributions that the men and women in the military who have served are making. As Francisco mentioned, I served in the Air Force for 10 years as a medical corps officer, and during that time worked with some of the hardest working people I have ever met. Now, each year there's about 200,000 people that separate from the military. And what is exciting to know is that about a third of them are going to venture out and try to start their own small businesses. So many of them come back to the San Antonio area, which is great. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're known as Military City USA, and we've had that title since before World War II. We have several major command bases here, with the main ones being U.S. Army North, U.S. Army South. We have Air Education Training Command and Army Regional Health Command here. Joint Base San Antonio is actually the biggest employer here in the city, employing close to 187,000 people and contributing $30 billion to the state of Texas, $13 billion here locally. And this doesn't include the economic contributions or impact that the spouses of our military members or their dependents make in our community. We also are proud to house the largest U.S. Air Force military construction program, contributing about $275 million into the community. We have about 500,000 veterans and dependents, as well as retirees, that all inject into the economy. And Texas is second to California in having the most veteran-owned businesses. Texas produces about 109 billion in sales a year. California a little bit higher at 135 billion. So, you know, I'm really proud of that. As a veteran, we have 2.4 million veteran-owned businesses, of which 7% are Latino. And I think that's really important to stress, because that is, you know, a pretty significant number. About 54% of our veteran-owned businesses average about 1 to 4 employees. So we employ close to 6 million people in the U.S. when I started off, I come from a military family, so I'm a military brat. My dad was the physician assistant, so I was very familiar with military medicine. So both my sister and I pursued careers in the military field, and we saw the Air Force as a way to be able to get through med school. And so we went on a health scholarship professional scholarship program. They got us through med school. We did our training in some of the best hospital with the most advanced technology available. And it gave me opportunities that I would otherwise not have had. I think that one of the most important things as military people that we get from being in the military is the leadership skills that we learn, but also the idea of working as a team and leaving no man behind. I think that when you meet military people and the leaders that lead the different commands, these are leaders that are not afraid to get down in the trenches with their people and do everything. When I first opened up my business with my husband, who's also prior military, we would do everything the first 2 years, 7 days a week. We were the ones cleaning the toilets, changing the light bulbs and stuff, because nothing was above us. And for us, what the military taught us was that, you put your mind to something and then you can do it. And, they really gave us the resilience that most small business owners do need. We're very proud of what we have built here in San Antonio. All of the physicians in our practice are veterans. One of the most rewarding things as a medical doctor in the military is that you get to treat the dependents, the spouses, the children of our active duty members, and especially when they're deployed. So this is a very big honor, because these are the people that are supporting our soldiers in the front lines. And so being here in San Antonio, it has enabled us to still, even as civilians, treat this population. And so to us, that's a real big honor that we can continue to service the families of our active duty members. I think that going back to the fact that 7% of the small businesses are veteran Latino owned, we need to keep in mind that the Latinos are the fastest growing minority. By 2030, we're going to be the majority minority, making up about 30% of the US. So you combine the skills that we learn in the military with the work ethic that is naturally ingrained in our culture, we've got this dynamic opportunity and huge potential for economic growth in this arena. And so going back to a lot of things that Francisco was talking about, it's important for us to be able to give the tools to the people coming out of the military to understand how to build a small business. And one of the most important things is to be able to reach out to people who have done it, who know maybe the best way to start. He talked about making sure that you register and certify as a veteran-owned businesses. I can't stress how important that is, and aligning yourself with those organizations that do support veterans, because there is so much out there. And I think that one of the best ways we can help others is to share this information. So Francisco, I'll head it back to you so that if there's any Q&A from the people on the webinar, we can address that.
Very good points, Erika. Thank you. And I think important to note, at least from the veteran businesses that we've encountered on our level, is that when they first ETS and they start businesses, they have a hard time asking for help. And they feel because they've done so much on their own that they can do the same while in the civilian world. And we often try to instill in our members that no, the more you ask for help, the easier it is going to be for you to succeed. But there's so many resources with the chambers, with the USHCC. Just this year alone, the USHCC awarded grants to many small businesses. We were one of the agencies, our chamber got awarded a grant. And what we did in return is I took the grant award and I awarded a service disabled veteran business a brand identity. So we designed their website, we designed their logo, we designed their digital kit, their capability statement, and kind of gave them an entry into the marketplace. But many this is more of a question for you, is many of the veteran businesses that we encounter are just shy and don't like asking for help. Is that the same in your area?
Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely see that. And I think that people are getting better at asking for help and realizing that there's people that have been in their exact same shoes, 5 years earlier, 10 years earlier, and that we're wanting to help. And so I think that one thing that distinguishes people who have served versus maybe the civilian, business world is that the military really like to help, and they like to help each other, and they're not shy about, sharing the tricks of the trade and what made them successful, because they don't necessarily see everyone as their competition. They realize the importance of being able to, succeed together and how much more meaningful that is.
One of the things that we try to stress to our veteran business is the importance of a capability statement. A capability statement, with if many who are on the call, is basically a resume for your company. So when you sit down with anyone, either in the corporate sector or a state contractor, or even the federal contractors, the first thing they ask, can I see your capability statement? And that is going to list your past performance. If you're into the federal marketplace, that is going to list your DUNS and cage number, which is like your federal tax ID number. And it's going to label in a very short paragraph highlights of why that customer should hire you or be interested in you. So if you don't have a capability statement, I would be happy to send you an example of mine so you can see what that looks like. And that is a great entry level barrier to these corporations and federal agencies. Another question that I get, Erica, is state and federal contract is incredibly frustrating to deal with, right? Some of the responses are 80 pages long. Some of the actual contracts that are put out are so confusing to understand. Why get into something that's so difficult? The answer is simple, right? When I first started my business, I knew that I wanted to get into state and federal contracting because there was a great, the federal and state agencies have great budgets, and the government pays. So I knew that it would pay off eventually, not quickly, but eventually. But I noticed that one of the things that I struggled with was understanding these responses. So in short, these contracts, right? 12 pages of one contract is just asking you for your business registration certificate in government language. So if you start reading through these 12 pages that simply says, send us your business registration certificate, the process becomes simpler. I mentioned PTAC. PTAC actually assists veteran businesses with responses. So if there's a question where there's a line item in that contract that you don't understand, reach out to your PTAC counselor, and they'll be able to assist you with some of those responses. But federal contracting and state contracting as well is also very different. So on the state level, when we respond to contracts, we have to resubmit all of our company documentation every single time. Department of Motor Vehicles, Department of Fish and Wildlife, Department of Economic Development Authority, they each require you to reintroduce your company. Very frustrating, but it's a process. On the federal level, our responses are a lot simpler. They just ask for your DUNS number and your cage number, and then the responses are maybe 2 to 3 pages long. So there's a big difference from state responses and federal responses and corporate. On a corporate level, is more like, you introduce your services. If you wow them with your presentation, they send you a contract and you have a contract. So there's the 3 levels of different barrier entries. Each are very different, but we happily walk people through understanding responses that could easily frustrate a small business owner who has very little time on their hands because they're doing accounting, they're doing HR, like you said, they're delivering whatever, you're doing it all as a small business owner. So how much bandwidth can you possibly have to respond to these state and federal contracts? My suggestion is what I did. my first contract, I partnered with someone who knew a lot more in government than I did. And I mentioned network early on. I placed my very first federal bid was for a website contract for the US Air Force. You're an Air Force veteran, so I thought you would appreciate that. I lost the bid. I was outpriced. I came in at $54,000. They did the job for $26,000, and I requested their proposal. And it's important to know that people on here, that you can request, once you submit a proposal, an Oprah request, which lets folks know, you get the responses from other people. That way you can see how they responded, how they articulate their product. So in short, I lost the contract. Some woman in a New Jersey conference, a small business owner, introduced herself to me. And in small talk, she goes, I'm interested in doing more with federal. We just won an Air Force contract a few weeks ago. And I had the little light bulb come up, and I'm like, did you bid on this contract? She goes, yeah. So I lost to her, and immediately I partnered with her. And since then, we have won 15 contracts together.
Wow.
So it's important to really know that it's okay to ask for help, because federal and state contract is incredibly challenging, but it's also important to know that there is a recipe for success. And like, I've been in state and federal contracting for 3 years, right? So I have so much knowledge to give another Latino interested, another veteran interested in getting into state and federal contract. I'll even take it one step further, which I wish someone would have done for me. When I first prepared my federal response, I was completely lost. I didn't know where to put the introductory letter. I didn't know where to put the scope of W, understanding the scope of W. I didn't know where to put the budget. I didn't know where to put anything. That first response took me about a month to prepare. A month. Can you imagine 30 days for one response? I will send anyone on this call an example of my state response and federal response so that you see what a winning contract looks like. Many people won't do that. They're like, that's proprietary. I'm not telling people how I respond to the federal government. God bless me with success. I want to bless other people with success. So I want to share my capability statement after this. I'm going to share a state response to those in attendance. And I'm also going to share a federal response with those in attendance, so you can kind of get off to a better start than I did 3 years ago. And I hope that's helpful to the group.
Well, thank you so much, Francisco and Erica, for your service and for your collaboration. We do have some questions popping up in our Q&A box. A reminder to all our participants, if you have any questions for our panelists today or for your USHCC team, please use the functions at the bottom of your screen to submit a question under the Q&A feature. And I'm going to go with the first question that's coming out of Seattle, Washington, and it's for you, Francisco. People are asking, what does the network of Veteran Chamber of Commerce look like across the United States? Are there more like the New Jersey Veterans Chamber of Commerce? And if they are, how do we, as veteran-owned businesses, plug into these chambers? Or do we need to help New Jersey establish more chambers like this across the country? And of course, this individual thanks the USHCC for bringing the Veteran Chamber of New Jersey to the table today, along with the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber, because they feel that we need more support for Hispanic veteran-owned businesses.
That's an excellent question, and I'll be happy to address that. There are not enough veteran organizations that champion veterans looking at getting into business and growing their business. We started the chamber in 2018, and we're one of the few veteran organizations or chambers across the US. New York since then launched one, and so did Philadelphia as of 2 weeks ago. But again, not many veteran chambers across the state. And we actually count on the support of organizations like the USHCC to amplify the veteran voice and amplify the tools for success that we need to grow our businesses. So I thank the USHCC for this platform, and we will continue to do more of this and support our veteran businesses. But great question. There needs to be more done.
Excellent. Thank you for that question. The next question is for Dr. Erica Gonzalez. Dr. Erica, you have definitely a lot of professional and military fans in the state of Texas. And I want to profess this, that this is not a political question, but it is up your alley. And the question hails out of the Dallas metro area. And it's for Dr. Erica, asking, Dr. Erica, what do you think is the new panoramic view for Hispanic and especially Latina veteran-owned businesses in the United States now that we are under a presidential transition and we are going to have a Democratic White House for the next 4 years? Do you believe this is going to help scale Hispanic, Latina veteran-owned businesses across our country?
Well, yes, absolutely. You know, I think that one of the things that we have seen in the past couple of years is how so many Latina veterans have come up, you know, to the plate to do different things. We had so many women just even in the San Antonio area and in the state of Texas who were military veterans who were running for office or, you know, coming into leadership roles. And so I think that now with a new administration, we're just going to be seeing more support for these women. And I think that as previously stated, you know, just as a Latino community, we're growing the fastest as any other minority in the US. And so we also have now more generations of females that have served in the military service. And so that they are ready to, you know, come out and start doing things. And I think now is the time that this is their opportunity and they're recognizing it and they're not afraid to step up and like Francisco was saying, and ask for help and you know, make sure that we're getting seats at the table.
Excellent. Well, this next question is for either one of you. Obviously, we have focused a lot on federal procurement, and someone out of the great state of New Mexico is asking, what is you all's advice in order to inject Hispanic veteran-owned businesses into supplier diversity programs in corporate America? Do you think that veteran-owned businesses have a bigger opportunity in federal government procurement or in private sector procurement? And I'll let either Erica or Francisco take that question.
I'll quickly just start, and then if Erica can jump in. So advocacy, 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 right? If you don't raise your voice, it won't be heard. So when we first started the chamber, a lot of I'll give you a perfect example that actually answers this question. The state of New Jersey has a huge conference that they started. They just brought on a chief diversity officer to the state 2 years ago. And her job is to work with diverse businesses and help them get contracts, help them get visibility. The contract prior to the Veteran Chamber launching was called the Minority Women Business Enterprise Convention. And I felt pretty left out. So we went to the Chief Diversity's office wearing our chamber hats, and we're like, why are veterans being left out? So after a very positive and stern conversation with the Chief Diversity Officer for the state of New Jersey, the conference was renamed the Minority, Women, and Veteran Business Enterprise. So things like that give awareness to veteran businesses. And when you have a conference that a state kind of throws and has all of the key stakeholders in one place, recognizing veterans, then the agencies are like, hey, what's our spend with veterans and why aren't we doing more, et cetera, et cetera. But it takes advocacy to raise awareness to veteran businesses. Erika?
I couldn't agree with you more, Francisco. I think that it does start with advocacy and making sure that if you're recognizing areas where maybe veteran businesses are not being considered, it's not often because they are being overlooked on purpose. It's often because they're not aware of some of the value that these veteran businesses can bring. So it does start with advocacy, and what we have seen is that in the last few years, so many organizations are beginning to recognize the value of military veteran-owned businesses, and so we're starting to collect the data. And so now we know how much veteran-owned businesses are contributing in the local communities, and what economic power that has. And so I think now, data is power. And the more data we collect, the more leverage we're going to have. And so I think it's a combination of that and just kind of speaking up for ourselves and, showing what the value is.
Excellent. Our next question comes from the great state of California, and a state that really is powered by Latinos and Latino business. That's where the USHCC has one of our largest networks of chambers of commerce, and we're so proud of the work that Latinos in California do. And the question is, as a new Latina veteran-owned business, what would your recommendation be as the top 3 organizations that we as a business should join between local chambers of commerce, non-Hispanic or veteran, and other business groups that help scale our business? There is a lot to choose from, and we are busy trying to evolve our business, especially going through a global pandemic, but want to get your intentional and contact network in order to see where our best fit is. What do you all recommend?
Dr. Gonzalez, I'll jump in after you, or I can jump in now and answer it.
Why don't you go ahead and start, Francisco? I think
Perfect.
You may have better knowledge of the national ones.
So on a national level, you have organizations like the NVBDC, the National Veteran Business Development Council. You have Novova. You have several organizations that are self-certifying bodies that work with private corporations and kind of help amplify the veteran business. However, to your point, which is an excellent one, who do you work with? Who do you choose for? Because your time as a veteran business is limited because you're doing so much. When I first started my business, fell under this category. I wanted to amplify my voice and work with other veteran organizations to get me into these corporations. The NVBDC, the National Veteran Business Development Council, charges you $500 for membership. $500 is money out of my pocket. After a year of kind of joining that organization, I'm not saying this is the same for everyone. I can't speak for that. But for me personally, in my business, I didn't see the ROI in paying $500 as a small veteran business because I didn't get a contract and I didn't network enough with their members. So I didn't see the value in it. In short, USHCC, although is not solely focused on veteran issues, is starting to engage more in veteran policy and how to assist. I say join them. Our chamber, although it's focused on New Jersey, anyone from California, I'll gladly answer any question. A veteran is a veteran. I'm sure Dr. Gonzalez's organization as well. So we don't charge for membership. So I say, look at the resources that you don't have to pay anything for. PTAC has national offices around the country. Procurement Technical Assistance Centers are free. So I would say look at that and look at VIP Grow and VIP Start before you start paying for any memberships for veteran organizations.
Francisco, real quick, now that you bring up the PTAC, can you please expand a little bit on PTAC? We have a question from Jose Garcia. What are the best resources to get grants for a small veteran Latina-owned business? We need grants or loans to start up and to make sure that we stay alive. These days, grants are streaming towards business to help them stay open during COVID. And I think, when Ramiro and I worked in San Antonio, PTAC was a very valuable resource. Can you just expand on what PTAC is and what they do a little bit more?
Of course, of course. So when I started my business, I was doing so much. I was very interested in state and federal contracting, but I didn't have the time to sit through a portal for 8 hours and figure out how to submit my veteran approved paperwork. So I hired a firm. Long story short, at the end of the year and a half, I was in $20,000. I don't have $20,000 as a small business to give to someone just to get me certified. It's just not the right thing to do as a small business. So upon further research, I was like, free resources for veteran businesses. Through my chamber president hat, I was made aware that the Department of Defense funds PTAC centers across the United States, and each state has one. Basically, what this is a funded program by the Department of Defense to help businesses get into the federal marketplace, state and federal marketplace. In short, that's what they do. They assess your needs. They do a kind of like an entry interview. They assess your needs and wants into the federal and state marketplace. And then they assign you a counselor that will walk you through how to build a proper capability statement, how to market yourself into the federal government, because the way you market yourself from the corporate sector to the state sector to the federal sector are all three different ways to market. And more importantly, they help you with responses when you need to submit a response to a state agency or a federal agency. So in short, that's what they do. Highly recommended because it's a free resources that's available to anyone right now.
Thank you, Francisco. And Ramiro, I know you're out there, and I know that along your professional career, you've worked very closely with PTAC in San Antonio and across the country. Is there anything that you would like to add as far as PTAC is concerned and the relationships that we've had with them in the past?
Thank you, Leroy, and thank you everyone for this. This is a great discussion that Dr. Gonzalez and Francisco are sharing. Their advice is are pearls of wisdom. So thank you, Francisco and Erica. You know, I had the honor of serving as the Director of Economic Development for the city of San Antonio for 7 years, as many of you know, and in this new role as the CEO of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Military City, USA, as Dr. Gonzalez said, it really prepared me well to work with great leaders like Francisco and others. It's to understand that, you know, the Procurement and Technical Assistance Center is funded by our tax dollars, as Francisco said, and it is almost free, if not free, and they're spread out throughout the whole country, the small business development centers. So most of the information is out there. And so Leroy, again, this is very helpful to everyone that's called in. It doesn't mean you can't use a consultant or someone that can, you know, aid you beyond that, like Francisco said, but you know, you need to find out where your ROI is and not when you're starting out, you don't have a lot of startup dollars to put and invest in. I would say in addition to the PTAC, I know when I was head of economic development, our biggest job was to fight base realignment and closures around the country. And we were in the midst of losing Brooks Air Force Base, as Dr. Gonzalez knows, and we created Brooks City Base. So we took an old Air Force base that we knew was going to shutter and converted it to a redevelopment center and had the city provide overall management. That national model that we started about 15, 20 years ago has now been used across the country in Aurora, Colorado, and other places. We don't want to leave any of these Air Force bases or military bases empty. We need to use them as economic generators. So we also, in addition to creating Brooks, which was the city-based concept, and it did take an act of Congress to do that, we also, of course, created the Office of Military Affairs in the Economic Development Department to help people like Dr. Gonzalez and Mr. Cortez to help them get those contracts. I'm a big believer that humility is a virtue that is overvalued. Humility sometimes holds you back, especially in our Latino and Latina community. We need to assert ourselves. We need to be persistent, as Frank was and Erica has been, to get that first contract, But with that persistence, we also then need to then become consistent, which is what Francisco has shared and Dr. Gonzalez also can do, is how do you keep those contracts and grow them to not lose them? And that's where consistency comes in. Partnerships are also critical, Leroy, in this field. And so the key thing is to work with the offices of economic development and military affairs, PTAC, also find mentors and advisors who are 8A contractors that have been successful to make sure that we get those contracts. And of course, the capability statement, you know, that is, you've got to sell your product better than anybody else. You've got to do your homework. You've got to be prepared when you pitch your business. You can't wait for them to ask you questions and try to pull it out from you, because you only have one good chance to make a good first impression. And, you know, we need to be very, have our elevator speech down the way other people's have it down, that are hungry and ready to go. So again, let's not be humble. Let's be assertive and get all the information that we need to do that. After all, it's our tax money. And as Erica and Francisco know, the U.S. Department of Defense is the largest buying service in the world. And we're the 8th largest economy in the world, the Latino community. And so we need to get a piece of that economic pie. Less than 7% of federal contracts are going to small minority and women-owned businesses. And that needs to change, especially for our veterans and our Latinos. So thank you, Leroy, for that question.
Ramiro, and in that spirit, the last question, or we have a couple more minutes before we close out, but that last statement you just made about 7%, that was the last question in the chat, is that how can we work together with the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and our partners to improve federal procurement practices and private supply chain practices in order to get more Latinos to the table? I think that that's a very fitting question to close out the webinar, and I'll leave that to you, Ramiro, to respond and then close us out and thank our panelists today.
No, well, thank you, Leroy. 2 quick points, and then I'll have Dr. Gonzalez and Francisco provide their closing thoughts. For us at the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, I never imagined I would have the honor of working for all of our Hispanic chambers. I had the honor, as Dr. Gonzalez knows, to work for more than 10 years helping run the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And so I'm a chamber guy. I'm a local chamber guy, like Francisco and Eric as a chamber gal. And so I will never forget where I came from. And I always think like the chamber. So I'm very proud, Leroy, that you know, we only ask $100 membership for our chambers. That will never change. That has stayed the same for 10 years, 20 years. And our goal is to put money back into our chambers and our communities, to the chamber grants, through the small business grants that Francisco and Erica have seen. Our job is to push money into the grassroots community, and we'll continue to do that and be servant leaders for you all in Washington. The second point, I would say, you know, as we move forward with a new administration, every one of the 21 cabinet level leaders in the president's cabinet needs to have procurement goals for those departments. They have billions and trillions of dollars they're awarding. And if each of those departments does not have a goal for contracting with Hispanic or minority-owned or women-owned businesses or veteran-owned businesses, then we're missing the ability to get that 7% number up to a higher number, Leroy. So for me, that's our goal at the U.S. Hispanic Chamber, is to increase the contracts and the business opportunities for our Hispanic business enterprises. And if this is the largest buying service, the Defense Department, they need to have their set of goals and implement those goals, and not be gatekeepers, but be facilitators of those contracts. We also are urging the Fortune 1000 corporations to get more women and Latinas on their boards and also increase their procurement. Many of them are saying the right things during 2020, but as we rebuild the economy, we know that consumer spending drives our nation's economy, not what happens in Austin, Mexico City, or Washington. It's what happens in our neighborhood. 70% of the rebuilding of our economy will depend on each of us buying goods and services from each other. In conclusion, thank you to everyone that's joined us. I'm very honored that in my family, veterans have really been the norm, and my father's and his brothers, all of them were either in the National Guard, Army, Air Force, or Navy, and I'm very proud that my dad's first cousin was a 4-star general. The highest ranking Latino in the Army was General Richard Cavazos from Kingsville, Texas, in South Texas. And we lost him about 3 years ago, but he served in Korea and Vietnam. And so very proud to be on this panel. As a non-veteran myself, I went off astray from the rest of the pack in my family, but I'm glad to be a champion for veterans issues. For Dr. Gonzalez and for Francisco, thank you for your time today and your leadership. And let's have Erica, Dr. Gonzalez, if you could go next, and then we'll conclude, Francisco, with you and give it back to Laura and Leroy. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Ramiro. You know, I think that I have seen how much more support our veteran businesses are getting, and it's because of the work that people like you, Ramiro, and Francisco are doing. You are right, Francisco, in saying that we need more chambers of commerce that are focused on veteran small businesses. But, you know, I'm so proud of the work that the United States Hispanic Chamber has done to start to kind of look at how they could reach out specifically to the veteran community. I know that with our chamber, we started to identify some of those gaps and, you know, had a lot of seminars in specifically on how to get those federal and state contracts, because like Francisco was saying, the process is very daunting. And so, you know, it's up to us to be able to reach out to our veterans and help them out. And, you know, as the chair of the Hispanic Chamber, one of the things that I did too was introduce the chamber to more veterans. Because for me and for my husband and my partners, the chamber, the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber, Ramiro, Leroy, and I know Bree, I saw her on the webinar as well. They played such a pivotal role in the success of our clinic. They really did. They were there from us from the very beginning. And we were family from the start, and we knew that we could always count on them. And so we need more organizations that veterans can feel they can go to and ask for this help and feel like they're being supported and protected. So I want to thank you, Francisco, and thank you, Ramiro, and your team for everything that you guys are doing. And it really has been probably one of the most important things in my life so far, to have been able to serve in the military. It really, I attribute everything I learned in the military to the success that I have at this point.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. In closing, I just want to say a few words, right? Starting a business is incredibly challenging. Growing a business that you've started is even more challenging. Doing so during a pandemic, God knows that adds a level of complexity beyond my measure. But don't give up. Don't give up, because you have the USHCC, you have the Veteran Chamber of New Jersey, you have Dr. Gonzalez's organization. Just like when you signed up and raised your hand to serve the country, you always knew that in that foxhole that you were in, you were never, ever going to be left alone, ever. So you have a team. For those listening, you are not alone. You have a team that is going to be with you through the good, through the bad, and through it all. So during these times, which I know is very difficult, right? Where some actually question, how am I going to keep my lights on? Where's my next contract going to come from? Is my business going to survive through the holidays? Don't give up, because it will. Okay? Reach out to us. Veterans Day is today. I thank you, the USHCC. I thank Dr. Gonzalez for their support. But the work starts today. It's not just one day where we celebrate veterans. We have to continue doing so throughout the rest of the year to make sure that no veteran business closes under our watch, and that we continue to support each other. So Ramiro, Dr. Gonzalez, USHCC, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for supporting us and for all that you do.
Thank you so much, Francisco, and thank you, Dr. Erica Gonzalez. Thank you, Ramiro, for your leadership here at the United States Hispanic Chamber. To all our participants out there, thank you for joining us today. Happy Veterans Day to each and every one of you, and thank you for your service. To all of those joining us at Facebook Live, at Facebook at USHCC, we appreciate it. Today's webinar was presented by the New Jersey State Veterans Chamber of Commerce, your United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in order to grow America's Hispanic veteran-owned businesses. All of the announcements and all of the registrations for this webinar will be shared with all participants. There is also information in the chat about an opportunity for veterans and Hispanics with Amazon delivery service. We encourage everyone to visit our partners at Amazon and learn more about these opportunities to scale your business. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you to each and every one of you, and stay safe and COVID-free. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.